Why do people seem to become more progressively conservative as they get older? The reality is what it means to be progressive changes over time, and not everyone changes with it. It is obvious to me there is no such thing as a perfect status quo, so I hope to always be changing. Always be reassessing what it means to want progress and what I need to do to make it happen. I have read this concept is not holding up. I'm a boomer. My first vote for president was for Jimmy Carter, and I'm way more liberal now than I was then. So I've moved left. I'm guessing religion, location and education is a better indication. People's ideas and values tend to change as they get older. I'm 29 years old, and I've certainly known people who've become much more conservative since we were teenagers. Boomers weren't progressive. There were hippies, but it's counterculture. The vast majority of them were very conservative in their views. People tend to get more conservative when they start having something to lose. They want to keep their money. They want to keep their investments. They want to keep their old ideas. They want to keep their jobs away from another. As people get older, they tend to have acquired stuff on the way. Not having stuff is probably a big part of why so many people in their 30s are still liberals. I'm Gen X. While I see that trend with some of my age group, they seem to be in the minority. I believe that after the madness and wildness of the 60s and 70s, the boomers grew up and then embraced Reaganism. My generation and younger I don't see going that way, as we have mainly been on the bad end of Reaganism. In fact, I'm still waiting for some of that tax cut wealth to trickle down to me, but I'm not seeing anything like that. This actually isn't happening as much as it used to. If you break down what the words really mean, a conservative is just someone who wants to conserve the way things were. And a liberal is progressive, wants to see change and improvement. Our ideals don't budge a whole lot. They definitely change and solidify over time. But the real reason you become conservative when you're older is because everything around you is more progressive now, and everyone thinks the era they grew up in was the best. We all idealize our childhoods, so we want things to stay that way. Actually, the opposite happened with my dad. All his life, he was an Eisenhower Republican, pro-military, socially and economically conservative, but not religious. Voted for Nixon, Reagan, Bush, Dole, Romney, McCain. Then he joined Facebook. I was quite nervous about this, as I thought he'd get sucked down fox-like rabbit holes of misinformation or live in conservative bubble. But the exact opposite happened. As he was exposed to more and more information and opinions via family and friends, his worldview actually expanded. He paid attention to stories and realized that there are multiple viewpoints to things. My dad ended up voting for Hillary and Biden. He's now vehemently anti-Republican. He supports gay rights, immigration reform, abortion access, women's rights, gun control, and voting reform. None of this happened overnight, but as he got older, he's now in his mid-70s. He's become more and more liberal by the day. Same thing happened to me. In high school in the 80s, I was an Alex P. Keaton Reagan-loving Republican. I realize now that it's not possible to have a nuanced political position at that age. But I was fascinated with the Cold War, so I identified with the Cold Warrior. I remained conservative until after college, when I became more exposed to a variety of people in my day-to-day. I became more sympathetic to other points of view, but clung to the GOP. Then I got sick, and cut stem cell funding, which was critical to research into my autoimmune disease. To me, it was callous and heartless. And like a light switch, my whole opinion of Republicans changed in an instant. I was one of those idiots who didn't get it until it happened to me. But once I saw the heartlessness in his decision, I began to see the heartlessness in all the decisions made by the right. Having to declare medical bankruptcy certainly sealed the deal for me. I spent my 30s and 40s slipping further and further to the left. When I eventually moved to Europe for a few years, I fell all the way to the democratic socialist side of the spectrum. The social contract is everything to me. Now, I eschew the American prerogative of me, and embrace the European prerogative of us. So not only for myself, but for my dad, age only brought us closer to the left, to humanitarian points of view, and acceptance of all. I'm the opposite. Started off following what I learned from my dad, which was being a conservative. As I experienced life on my own and learned new things, I became liberal. Lots of people that never leave their hometown will stay stuck in their same mindset because their eyes have never been open to another's point of view. I get more left-wing. I feel like most don't become more conservative. They just don't update their views, if that makes sense. Like if their political beliefs were permanently set at the age of 30 and when they're 70 they still hold true to them even though society has passed them by. This is a great question. My dad always told me, "You'll understand when you're older." I'm somewhere in my 40s now. Still not conservative, but I am much more center-left than I used to be. I don't see that dial changing, because I feel progress is good for mankind. Few people go from far left to far right, but people get bumped around in life and experience disappointments and harsh realities. This can lead to a less idealistic viewpoint, which correlates to being more conservative. I found as I get older and more world experience under my belt, and the more I learn, the more I go from leaning right to the middle, and now what my wife calls middle with a left-leaning stance. I do not feel like old people become more socially conservative. I feel like they become more economically conservative. There are X number of laurels, and each of us has a share of the total. Some have a lot, some have none. When you want to rest on your laurels, you want to conserve the laurels you have, and put up barriers to other people maneuvering some of your laurels away. When you have not yet earned enough laurels to rest on, you prefer an arrangement that makes the attainment of laurels easier for you. Which also means those laurels need to be more easily maneuvered away from the people resting on them. If government makes more laurels, then the existing laurels are worth less. And so inflation hurts people on fixed income the most. It's an inverse. It's not that you get older and get more conservative. It's that the current older generations are more conservative, when the current 20 and 30-year-olds are 60 and 70. By and far, they'll still have the same ideals and feelings on things like that. The same politics and such. Older people are more likely to own property. That's a major factor. It informs their opinions about economic policy, but also issues like crime. They don't like anything that could potentially decrease the value of their house. As an example, 18 years old who lives at home and maybe works part-time, wants college and healthcare amongst other things for free. 35-year-old who has his own house and numerous other bills, doesn't want to work full-time just for a big chunk of his time, earnings to pay for other people's stuff. I've noticed my attitudes have changed towards some things as I got older because I've seen the effect they have over time. I've seen a tree grow in a neglected garden and 30 years later block out the sun all around it and push over all the garden walls. Without seeing that with my own eyes, it's hard to understand the impact that one tree would have. Just over a few decades and seeing 1,000 scenarios like that play out has changed how I view things. I see beyond the next moment now. I see how consequences unfold over decades, and in another few decades I'll be dead and be completely unable to bring to bear this wisdom gained over ages in any meaningful way.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.